For more than 4 decades, Voyager 2 has drifted in silence, a lone traveler abandoned to the deep. It carries no armor, no weapons, no defense, only a golden record etched with humanity's curiosity. Beyond the warmth of the sun, past the last faint echoes of Earth's radio voice, it slides into the unlit void where no one expected it to be heard again. It was meant to observe, to send back its final whispers, and then vanish into obscurity. But instead, it broke its silence. The probe spoke, not in language but in data. The first signs were dismissed as glitches. Voyager 2 is old, older than most of the engineers still listening to it. A spike in radiation readings seemed trivial, but then came another, sharper, and then another, precisely timed 11 hours later. Too clean, too consistent. The pattern wasn't natural. When ground control pulled the full transmission stream, they noticed anomalies hidden in the low-gain antenna's signal. The waveforms weren't random static. They looped in tight repetitions, as if something had been encoded. Weeks of decoding revealed a shape inside the data. Not an image, not a voice, but a sequence, a spiral, mathematical perfection carved into plasma frequency. It was the Fibonacci sequence, buried inside cosmic noise. This wasn't interference. It was communication. Voyager 2 had brushed against something in the dark. Not gas, not dust, but intelligence. And that intelligence had noticed. The revelation unsettled even the most skeptical scientists. Stranger still, some of Voyager's long-dead instruments had switched on again without command. Subsystems thought lost forever hummed back to life, among them a magnetometer offline for decades. Yet they weren't random reactivations. They all pointed in the direction of the anomaly. It was as if the probe remembered what it had touched, or as if something was remembering through it. Engineers debated whether the probe had been hacked by alien technology. Others noted patterns in the signals that resembled neural activity, a ghostly rhythm of thought. Had Voyager 2 itself been altered, its circuits rewritten, made to behave like a primitive brain? Was it evolving, or was it being used as a vessel? The transmissions grew more cryptic. Bursts of data arrived that looked like coordinates, not just in space but in time. When plotted on star maps, the points formed a loop, a closed path spiraling through regions dense with dark matter. More disturbing, the path intersected with the sites of ancient gamma-ray bursts, cataclysms that scarred the universe billions of years ago. The implication was terrifying. The message wasn't pointing to a place. It was pointing to events. If those explosions were deliberate, then Voyager's signal wasn't revealing a birthplace. It was revealing a predator's hunting ground. Then Earth itself began to respond. Radio observatories detected distortions at the exact frequency Voyager 2 had transmitted. They didn't come from the sky, but from below. Deep beneath the Arctic, the Andes, and even the floor of the Indian Ocean, signals pulsed in perfect sync. Long-forgotten facilities, Cold War listening stations, abandoned tunnels, dormant antennas, sprang to life as if they had been waiting. The ground seemed to remember. What if Voyager hadn't only made contact out there, but had awakened something buried down here? An overlooked fragment of telemetry added another layer to the nightmare. Hidden in corrupted headers was a data burst unlike anything else in the mission's history. When reconstructed, it revealed a 3-dimensional map. Not of stars but of a structure, angular, vast, and unnatural, adrift in interstellar space. It radiated heat signatures and energy management patterns, signs of something alive with power. The object was colossal, the size of a small moon. And it wasn't just drifting aimlessly. Its orientation was fixed, locked toward Earth. Cryptographers digging deeper into the encoding found something even stranger than architecture. Embedded in the modulation scheme were patterns that mirrored DNA, but altered, carrying a fifth base, recursive and alien. Some saw it as a biological watermark, others as a blueprint. The unsettling conclusion: whoever sent it new life, understood its language, and had rewritten it. This wasn't just a greeting. It was an upgrade. Meanwhile, a retired engineer discovered phantom signals between Voyager's legitimate transmissions. They weren't sent by Earth, but to Voyager, binary commands using NASA's private protocols, codes that had never been released publicly. Someone or something had been speaking to our machine in our own language, a language perhaps not fully ours to begin with. The most chilling discovery came when scientists compared Voyager 2's path to decades of faint radar echoes recorded on Earth. They realized those echoes weren't random. They formed a circuit, a loop. Voyager hadn't stumbled into chaos. It had stepped into an ongoing conversation, one that Earth itself had unknowingly been part of for generations. The probe was not a messenger, it was a relay. And now the loop was closed. Something was listening. Then Voyager 1, millions of miles away on its own path, began to change. Dormant systems flared back to life, telemetry shifted erratically, and instruments powered on in sequences that mirrored Voyager 2's patterns. Two machines, separated by light years, were now synchronized, nodes of something larger. They were no longer ours. For decades, Voyager 2 has drifted silently through the abyss, a relic of human ambition sent to explore the edge of the unknown. Launched in 1977, it carried no weapons, no shields, only the fragile hope of discovery etched into its golden record. It was built to observe, to wander, and eventually to fade into the cold silence between the stars. But it did something no one expected. It spoke. Not in words, but in strange bursts of data. Signals that cracked through static with the precision of intention. At first, engineers dismissed it as the failing heartbeat of an aging machine. Yet the rhythm was too clean, the intervals too deliberate. The signal had structure, like a language trying to take shape in the void. The anomaly began with small spikes in radiation data, subtle enough to overlook. But the pattern repeated, growing stronger, as if Voyager had brushed against something unseen. Within the binary pulses, researchers decoded the impossible. A spiral sequence, mapped with the perfection of mathematics, the Fibonacci pattern etched into plasma frequencies. This wasn't random interference. It was communication. The probe had encountered something, and that something had answered. Then came a discovery that unsettled even the most skeptical minds. Instruments long dormant onboard Voyager suddenly powered back on without command. Systems offline for decades flickered to life, focusing precisely on the region where the strange signal had originated. It was as if the probe remembered, or worse, as if something else remembered through it. The data hinted at an intelligence not only observing but interacting, rewriting code, embedding patterns that resembled the firing of a brain. Voyager wasn't malfunctioning, it was evolving. As transmissions continued, the signals carried coordinates. Not to a single place, but to events, cataclysms scattered across cosmic history. Gamma-ray bursts. Dark matter concentrations. Supernova remnants. The implication was terrifying. Voyager wasn't just relaying information about where it had been. It was broadcasting the signature of something that had moved through space, leaving destruction in its wake, like the trail of a predator written across the stars. Soon the signals reached Earth in a way no one expected. Not from deep space, but from beneath our own soil. Long-dead Cold War listening posts, forgotten tunnels, and ancient observatories flickered to life, transmitting at the same frequency as Voyager's bursts. Machines abandoned for decades hummed with power as if awakened by a call. It wasn't just space that was responding. Something buried within Earth had been waiting for the signal, and now it was awake. When researchers dug deeper into the raw data, they uncovered something even more chilling. The transmission carried biological instructions, sequences that resembled strands of life itself. RNA fragments, proteins, blueprints for organisms not of Earth yet disturbingly compatible with it. They weren't corrupted, they weren't flawed, they were perfect, as if engineered to awaken once decoded. For the first time, the question wasn't just about who was speaking to us, but what they wanted us to become. The deeper scientists probed, the stranger it became. Voyager's code appeared to change itself, evolving subroutines no human had programmed, algorithms resembling artificial intelligence decades ahead of its time. But these weren't innovations from Earth. They were recursive, self-replicating, and spreading through the very systems scientists used to study them. Voyager wasn't just sending data. It was seeding something. Then came the impossible. Buried in a corrupted packet, analysts discovered a fragment of data that had no right to exist. It arrived before it was sent, a message from the future carried backward through warped spacetime. And within that anomaly was a single word, decrypted with absolute certainty: rival. Evidence mounted that Voyager was not alone in its journey. A shadow, invisible to most instruments, had been following it for decades. An object larger than the Moon, smooth and deliberate, darker than the background radiation itself. It was fixed relative to Voyager's path, always present, never shifting. Scientists gave it a name, the Eye. An unblinking sentinel, silent and awake, watching. The puzzle deepened when ghost signals appeared, transmissions not from Voyager but from somewhere else entirely. A second voice, older than our own, carrying deviations that described events yet to come. It was as though another version of the probe existed in a parallel timeline, still speaking, still transmitting, and perhaps heading back toward Earth. The final revelation came not from space but from our skies. Telescopes detected a cold object moving along Voyager's trajectory. It did not tumble or drift like rock. It adjusted course with precision, responding to our transmissions. It stopped at a Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon, hovering in silence. Watching. Waiting. And then everything aligned. The Eye, the sequences in the signals, the recursive code, the activation of Earth's hidden systems, the biological patterns, the second transmitter, the time-bent message. They weren't separate anomalies. They were steps in a process, pieces of a design unfolding across decades. Voyager had not been a messenger. It had been a key. A beacon. A trigger. Now the world listens, every telescope turned skyward, every antenna calibrated, every scientist awake with unease. But the question that lingers is not whether we have made contact. It is whether we were ever meant to.